Good evening. My name is Lynne Kochmaski, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of the Ann Arbor area, serving all of Washtenaw County. I welcome you to our Zoom forum featuring 4 of the 7 candidates for the public schools of the City of Ann Arbor board member positions. Immediately following this forum, we will host the remaining 3 candidates in a second forum. All the candidates will be on the ballot in the general election on Tuesday, November 3rd. This year, the League of Women Voters is celebrating 100 years of expanding voter rights, educating voters, and shaping and influencing legislation at local, state, and national levels. We are pleased to sponsor these forums. The League is a nonpartisan civic organization that encourages informed and active participation by all citizens in government. While the League does not support candidates or parties, we do take stands on issues that we have studied. One of the League's most important goals is to assist voters in making informed choices at the polls, and thus we bring you tonight's program. Our moderator this evening is Kochmaski, who will explain the format and get us started. Chris?
Thank you, Lynn. Tonight's forum is the first of 2 for the public schools of the City of Ann Arbor board member positions. This forum will feature 4 of the 7 candidates, and immediately following, there will be a second forum with the remaining 3 candidates. Now it's my honor to introduce the first 4 of 7 candidates running for the public schools of the City of Ann Arbor board member positions. Ms. Krystle DuPree, Mr. Jeff Gaynor, Ms. Jamila James, and Ms. Maggi Kennel. Thank you, candidates, for participating in this forum. The forum tonight will have this format. Each candidate will have an opening statement of up to 1 minute. Each candidate will have a closing statement of up to 90 seconds. In between, I will ask questions which came from the Ann Arbor community. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to a question. At appropriate times, a sign on the screen will indicate the time remaining, 30 seconds, and then stop. If you have used up your time, you'll be allowed to finish your sentence, and then your microphone will be muted so the other candidates will have an equal opportunity to participate. The candidates will begin by speaking in alphabetical order. Depending on the number of questions, all candidates will have an opportunity to be the first or last to answer the questions. Okay, we're up to the opening statement time, and we're ready for your opening statement, Krystle DuPree. Okay, unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, I was having all the technical difficulties in this very moment. So, my name is Krystle DuPree. I am a mother here in Ann Arbor Public Schools. I have a 9-year-old son that attends Thurston Elementary School. I am a veteran. That's actually how I ended up in Ann Arbor. I'm originally from the west side of Detroit. I came to Ann Arbor following military service in order to obtain a college education. So I have a undergraduate degree in social work from Eastern Michigan University, and I have a master's degree from the University of Michigan. I'm also a member of COPA, which is the Coalition for Parents, Advocates, and Attorneys. I decided to join COPA as a way to help me learn how to advocate for my own son and his special education needs. I find it to be a valuable resource because now I can actually help other parents as well when they have questions. I'm running for school board because I care about the district and how the schools actually connect to our community at large.
Thank you, Ms. DuPree. And now, Jeff Gaynor, may we have your opening statement?
Thank you. Yes, Jeff Gaynor. I was born and raised in Detroit, proud graduate of the Detroit Public Schools. Came to Ann Arbor as a freshman at the university in 1968. Earned my degree in elementary education in 1978. I've been a teacher, or I was a teacher for 38 years, split pretty evenly between elementary school and middle school. I've taught every grade from 1 through 8. In 2016, I announced I was retiring, and I was approached by parents and teachers who urged me to run for the school board. They said I was the teacher who at staff meetings would speak up when everybody else wanted to, but maybe were uncertain about doing so. So I did run, and I was elected. So I have a record to be judged by for the last 4 years. I think many people are pleased with my openness and transparency and voting as a matter of conscience. I'm sure I've pleased some and displeased others, but there's still work to be done, and I look forward to serving longer.
Thank you, Mr. Gaynor. And we are ready for your opening statement, Jamila James.
Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. I've been having
Okay. We're losing the feed from Jamila.
I think that we are not preparing our children for the current future. I think that we focus a lot on kids that are going to college, but everyone else get kind of lost in the trenches. I am for social emotional learning, restorative justice. I want skilled trades back into the school. I'm for equity, and I'm about life skills. I always ask parents the question that if your kids graduated from high school today and they didn't have your money and your support system, would they be able to survive? Based on today's school system, they would not. And I feel like it's our responsibility to prepare them for the real world. I also want money management to be a requirement for graduation. I want to take care of our children holistically. My only loyalty is to the students, to the kids, and I'm going to take care of all the kids just like I took care of mine. I have a child that's still in the school system at Skyline. My two oldest have graduated, one from college, one I actually pulled for Pioneer because it wasn't working for us. So I want to be there to take care of all of your kids like I take care of mine.
Okay, thank you, Ms. James. And finally, may we have your opening statement, Maggie Kennel.
Hi, my name is Maggie Kennel. I am a parent of 3 current students enrolled in the Ann Arbor Public Schools. I have a 6th grader, a 9th grader, and an 11th grader. And my husband and I both grew up in Ann Arbor. We're both graduates of Ann Arbor Public Schools. My husband went to Pioneer. I went to Huron. So we have a lot of experience as students. And one of the reasons we chose to raise our kids here is because of the rich educational experiences that we experienced while we were here. And we wanted to make sure that our kids had the same opportunities. When I started my kids in the schools here, I started my journey on volunteering in the schools. So I have been in the school system for the last 11 years, and I am running for the school board because I feel a call to action to improve the experiences of our teachers, our students, our parents, our administrators, and community members. And I think to do this, we need to increase transparency, have more honest communication. We need to shape better learning models. We need to work on equal educational experiences for all. We need to increase our board accountability. And because of my experiences in the school system, I'm going to be ready on day one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates. And now to the questions. As a reminder, I'll be reading the question once and it will not be repeated unless requested. To begin tonight, we'll start with Jeff Gaynor for the first question. And here it is. Being an effective school board member requires deep and wide knowledge of the district, how it operates, how it's funded, what each school's strengths and weaknesses are, how teachers are treated, what administrators do, and that's just a start. What do you bring to the table that makes you the candidate of choice? Which areas of the job might you need to learn more about in order to be an effective leader? Mr. Gaynor?
When I first ran in 2016, I ran based on my 38 years of classroom teaching experience, grades 1 through 8, and some subbing at various times in the high school. So I know the reality in the classroom. I have taught at several schools. Before my 32 years in Ann Arbor Public Schools, I've taught in other districts, other towns. So I have a broad knowledge of how schools operate at the classroom level and certainly at the building level. Since I've been on the board, I've learned a lot more. I knew the basics of finance. Everybody here has been learning and knows a great deal, but you do have a better understanding once you're on the board, starting with classes or workshops with the Michigan Association of School Boards. and also being on committees. I think I've been on 7 committees, from planning to performance to finance, which I'm the chair of now. I'm the liaison to the City Schools Committee and to the Washtenaw Association of School Board. I also do an incredible amount of reading and research on issues of our time. It does take time, it does take dedication, it certainly takes a commitment to our students, as Jamila says. And it's also important to have an open channel with all stakeholders in the district, students, teachers, parents, and other community members. And as secretary of the board, that was my mission, to make sure communication was two-way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaynor. And now Ms. James. Okay. Jamila,
So-
are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Can you
can
hear me?
hear you. Oh, there you are.
Okay. So as a parent for the past 16 years, and one of those parents that are always in and out the schools and in and out the offices, I know how the classroom works because I've also been like a room parent, and I'm that crazy involved parent. So I know how the school classrooms work. I know how the principal more or less work because I'm always picking somebody's brain about something. I know a little bit about how the board works as far as that they write the policies and they are the ones that are responsible for Dr. Swift's actions when it's all said and done, whoever the superintendent is. I think that life is about a constant learning. There's always something else that you can learn and learn more about and learn a different perspective of. As a parent, I have one perspective. As a board member, I'll learn other perspectives, as well as get the perspectives for other people involved in the decision making, because I'll be talking to them and I'll be involved in the process. That's it, I guess.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. James. Now Ms. Kennel.
Thank you. So I think that one of the strengths that I bring to the board is that I have 20 years as a research scientist. So I know how to look through data. I know how to look for creditable sources. As a parent with over 11 years of experience in the schools, as I've been across 2 different PTOs. I've served for 3 years as a PTO president across 2 school systems. I've actively been fundraising with silent auctions in the schools. I have a very wide network of parents across the entire district that I interact with and communicate on a regular basis. And they're one of the reasons that I chose to run this year was because of all of the issues we've been kind of overturning throughout the school system. I also think that, for the last couple of years, I've really been following the school board and looking into finance and how schools are allowing in-district transfers and school of choice, and looking to see if that's adding to our inequities across the district. And so I think that I have a good basis and understanding of what the board does, although I'm ready to step in and learn from the people who have the experience on the board. I do think that there are some areas that I'm going to have to learn more about. One of them is special education. I don't actually have any children that have actually needed any special education services. And so I know that that is definitely an area of weakness on my part, and I will definitely look forward to reviewing and learning and hearing from the parents and the experts so that we can help make better policies moving forward. But overall, I think it's just my interactions, my ability to lead in the district, and my willingness to look for the people who are the experts and can provide insight into the issues so that I, as a board member, can make an informed decision.
Thank you, Ms. Kennel. Now Ms. DuPree.
Okay, so really tossing over this, and one of the things that I bring to the table with being a social worker is in order for you to remain licensed, you have to have continuing education. So I chose a profession that pretty much made me a lifelong learner. So I'm always about learning. Also evidence-based practice requires a ton of research, and I love to do research. It's one of the things that I really, really enjoy. I'm also skilled in program evaluation and development. So that was one of my focuses at the University of Michigan, and also public policy analysis. So I worked at Mothering Justice as a public policy analyst for a very, short period of time. There, I was also supervising those who were in our fellowship program for public policy analysts. So I say all this to say, when it comes to really understanding how the community connects to schools, I've also reached out to different organizations that we're currently working with. For example, we're working with the University of Michigan Depression Center and learning more about how these programs connect to our school, how do we expand on programs like this and deepen our partnerships. So that is something that I'm able to bring. As far as learning more, I was actually very happy to hear that we had training for the board. I reached out to a couple of board members and they said, yeah, we have this training. And that was amazing because I love trainings. I love to learn and I want to be effective and proficient at what I do. So I'm looking forward to doing that training. I think learning how we can specifically pay for some of these programs, particularly anything related to DEI or cultural responsiveness. I think that's something that I want to look heavy into, just to make sure that we're listening to the community when we're speaking of these type of issues and coming up with tangible ways to address them that is also cost effective. So.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Now we'll move to question 2. Okay, your second question is about COVID-19. And this is a big question. In fact, it's many questions in one. So think of the pandemic's ramifications on our schools, children, teachers, parents, and community. You've been around for the discussions. You've been around for the directives that came from the school district and for the reactions from every corner. Were the right decisions made? What is the ongoing prognosis for our distance learning methodology? How do we address the lost time for students who are not experiencing in-person instruction? Who should be our advisors and our experts? What further role is there for the board to play? Now, this is a lot for you to answer in just a short time slot. So please focus on what your top priorities would be for addressing the effects of COVID-19 on our schools and students, if you're elected to the board. Ms.
I'm sorry, you went out. Could you repeat that question again? It was a lot of them in there.
Okay, it's about COVID-19, and you think of the pandemic's ramifications on our schools, children, teachers, parents, and community. You've been around for the discussions, you've been around for the directives that came from the school district, and for the reactions from every corner. Were the right decisions made? What is the ongoing prognosis for our distance learning methodology? How do we address the lost time for students who are not experiencing in-person instruction? Who should be our advisors, our experts? What further role is there for the board to play? So again, that's a lot to answer in a short time slot. So please focus on what your top priorities would be for addressing the effects of COVID-19 on our schools and students if you're elected to the board.
So first off, I am a nurse by profession. So I absolutely believe that the right call was made. We do not know a lot about this virus. Our information is continually evolving, and if the top priority should be our children's safety. So I 100% agree with the decision to go online. The way we're going to have to address the learning deficit is that we're going to have to make sure that these kids are getting the tutoring they need, they're getting the support that they need. We get the kids with IEPs at 504s at K through 5 in as soon as possible, because they're going to be the ones that's suffering the most at this point in time, because it's very difficult for them to do online learning. Who should we consult as the experts? It depends on which aspect you're talking about. If you're talking about continuing the education and re-upping them because they've been out of school so long, or because they're doing online learning, I think the experts are the teachers. They've worked with these kids while they've been online. They are the ones that have the degree in teaching, and I think that we should listen to them to see which is the best ways to do it. If we're talking about when to go back to school, we have to look at the virus count, the metrics, and make sure that it's actually safe for the children to go back. I do recognize that it is very inconvenient. It's a pain in the butt. It's difficult. It's difficult. It's a very difficult situation we are all in as parents, especially parents of younger children. But we have to take into their safety into consideration above all things. I think that as a school board member, it's also my responsibility to make sure not only that we're making safe decisions, but that we are making equitable decisions, making sure that the people that need the most support are getting the most support. And it doesn't matter where they live or what grade they are or what type of support we have. It's up to us to take care of it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. James. Now, Ms. Kennel.
Yeah, so I agree with Jamila. I am by training a cellular molecular biologist. I have over 8 publications. I work currently at the Michigan Hospital in the Blood and Marrow Transplant Center for Adult and Pediatrics. And I actually work with immunocompromised people. That's what my job is. And I do clinical trials in this realm. So my background in pharmaceuticals, because I worked at Pfizer for 10 years, as well as doing clinical research, kind of give me an edge in understanding this virus. We don't know a lot about it. It's going to be changing, and our children need to be protected. Children are the most vulnerable population when you look at clinical trials, and they need special protection. So I think that putting our children in the schools is definitely us allowing a trial to take place where we don't actually have the data out there yet because we shut down so quickly in March. So we need to make sure that as we reopen, we have very good safety protocols in place. We have good plans. I know that they're going to only bring back like 20 to 30% at the beginning, and they're going to start at the K through young 5s through 2nd grade. So I think that those are important protocols that we need to put in place. I think that we're going to have to measure the deficits as we start to return to teachers being in person. And I think that we need to make sure that we're thinking outside the box and how we're going to work to build off of those deficits so their children can be effective learners when they come back to school eventually. While we're online, there are a lot of tools. I think we need to turn to experts in the community, partner with our Washington Intermediate School District, see how other school districts are doing it. And I think that we can utilize the things that are working positively across the districts and combine them to make the best, most effective process moving forward. I also think that we can utilize what our teachers are telling us, and we need to listen to the parents so that we can understand what the school system needs to put in place and what is most urgent.
Thank you, Ms. Kennel. And now, Ms. DuPree.
Okay, so COVID. I do feel like closing the schools and going virtual was the best decision to make right now, given all the information that we have. Just on, what is this, October 7th, well, actually Tuesday, we got a notification from Ann Arbor Public Schools stating that there was a football team, Huron Valley Varsity, that students had to be quarantined on the team because there was a positive case of COVID. So I really do believe that it was the right thing to do to close. As far as making up for lost time, I do think that we should either delay or cancel standardized testing this year. Unfortunately, some of our kids are going to be much farther behind than others. And it's not really standardized if everyone is not getting the exact same opportunity to do well on the testing. So I really feel like it would be a good idea to look into that when we're talking about lost times and how our students are affected. Also having advice from public health officials and also behavioral health officials. Again, like I stated, the University of Michigan Depression Center already has a partnership with Ann Arbor Public Schools. So how is this affecting our students not being able to have the same type of interaction with teachers and fellow classmates? So another thing that we can do to advise what's going on. I know that currently our district is looking at the ventilation systems and different PPE so that when we are able to go back to school, that we'll be safe in considering the safety of teachers and our students. But again, I do think that right now, as the best option that we had was to really close and go online virtual. And I do support going hybrid when we're able to do so.
Okay, thank you, Ms. DuPree. And now, Mr. Gaynor.
There are a number of issues, broad issues that the board has to be aware of and learn about and make decisions about. Nothing has come close to the intensity and complexity of this one. And there are 2 parts to it. There's the question of how and when we return to in-person instruction. And as we're all experiencing in the school system now, how to best do virtual. We are working with the Washtenaw County Health Department and other experts and other data sources and research sources. And we also have the benefit of dozens and dozens of parents, often epidemiologists, medical doctors, who are sending us articles to read. And so that makes up many hours of my day, just trying to stay up with the research. And we have developed metrics. And there's some difference of opinion. It becomes a judgment issue, but I am in agreement with these metrics that we have to consider the safety of not only the children, but the adults that will be with them in a closed space for 7 hours a day in school, as well as family members that the children come back to. I also in agreement with the plan to bring back students with individual education plans and the youngest students, as Maggie says, young 5 to 2nd graders. In fact, we were having conversations with the superintendent to do so before the recent spike in cases. We have a lot of improvement to do, and this is expected with virtual learning. There's a lot of new things. I did research on Schoology, the learning platform, and advised against it, and that's a tremendous strain on teachers and families right now. There are advantages to it. We're making adjustments with schedules and with some of the curriculum issues, and that's going to be ongoing.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Now, the next 2 questions concern initiatives that are high priorities for both Washtenaw County and Ann Arbor. So here's question 3. With the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program, there's a need to understand what the Black Lives Matter movement means to students, especially after the Pioneer High School episode referring to ongoing discrimination in our high schools. What can the board do to see that this matter is a top priority initiative that is addressed and solved, and that there's a safe environment for those airing their concern? Kennel.
I'm so sorry. Can you please repeat the end of that again?
Okay. Well, what can the board do to see that this matter is a top priority initiative, and that's the Diversity and Equity and Inclusion program, that is addressed and solved, and that there's a safe environment for those airing their concerns?
So this is a question that we've all been seeing a lot, and I think it's an important one in our district. I think that we need to take the time, first of all, to acknowledge what is going on, and we need to listen. We need to be aware of what the issues are, and we need to create a safe space for people to share those ideas and those concerns. Sometimes that might mean small groups, sometimes that might mean one-on-one. I think we also need to reach out to the schools directly, individually. Some schools seem to be more affected than others based on the population and their diversity makeup. So I think that the teachers and the administrators at that school will be able to give us a lot of insight. I think that the counselors need to be utilized. There's a lot of counselors that, have been hearing these issues and dealing with them in the school district. And I think that we need to listen to their voice. And I think that we need to create safe spaces where people are allowed to voice these opinions without repercussions. I think that students also need to be able to have a forum that they're allowed to either, anonymously or vocally be able to give us the information that's needed as a board. And then I think we need to start looking at what those root causes are and how we can change them. It may come down into changing some of the curriculum in the schools. It might come down to hosting trainings. I know they do a lot of drug and social and emotional building with the high schoolers when they get in. So it's going to come down to making this a priority as a curriculum topic for our students, and so that we can build a safe space where people can learn, can discuss, and have open communication about these topics so that we can all learn and move forward. And then I think we need to look at our ability as a district to reprioritize our students' voices by hopefully adding a student to the school board.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kennel. Now, Ms. DuPree.
Thank you. So since the beginning of my campaign, I've been talking about coalition building meetings and also making sure that we have a student representative on the school board. One of the things I've also talked about was being instrumental and wanting to be instrumental in the development and implementation of a discrimination tracking system in our district, which is one of the asks of the students for Pioneer High School. As someone who has really dedicated their life to advocacy and service, and most of my work has been working towards dismantling systemic racism. I am a chapter lead for Black Lives Matter Ann Arbor, and I've been doing this work as far as organizing for about 6 years. I've also organized with the Poor People's Campaign. I think that the coalition building meetings are a great thing, but we need tangible steps, and that will be the implementation of a discrimination tracking system. We also need to make sure that teachers are getting anti-bias training. Now, as someone who was so uplifted and elevated by their teachers, I wanted to say that this is not saying that there's something wrong with them and that they don't know what they're doing, but it is to say that the idea of unconscious bias is something that we all deal with and we all have to address. And in order for you to do your job effectively, and I know this as well as being someone as a soldier, you have to actually address those biases. So these are some of the tangible steps that we can make. We can also form a stronger coalition with the University of Michigan Program Evaluation Group, where they will be able to give us a culturally responsive evaluation and possibly be able to help develop a curriculum that is, again, culturally responsive. I am a very big fan of an integrated learning model, which again involves culturally responsive teaching and integrated services. It helps with special education services, particularly when we're talking about how that intersection of ability and race actually affects Black and Indigenous children of color who experience these different discriminations. I think that we can work very hard in the intellectual space that we're in to do some actual steps toward making our children feel safe in our district.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. DuPree. And now Mr. Gaynor.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to my career as a classroom teacher. We've been talking about the racial achievement gap throughout 3 decades and longer. But we talk about it, but we skirt around the issues. Maybe, I can't remember, about 10 years ago, we faced it for the first time head on in staff meetings. We had what's known as courageous conversations, where we were encouraged, these are some of the safe spaces, to talk about our own experiences and to share really deep experiences we've had and we've witnessed. And I felt the environment changed at that point, and that the sharing of this did lead to, it did transfer to how we worked with students. I'm not sure that, that did not continue after 2 or 3 years. And we are doing things. The new lessons that are being designed, that are being set up for the whole school, does include cultural responsive teaching elements in it. But at some point, I feel it's more symbolic, more rhetoric, more pattern than it is deeply held and integrated in with everything. But I haven't been in the classroom, but I know there is an attempt to include that in our lessons. The administration has been working on an equity plan for almost 2 years now, but so far it's only include administrators. And it's really important that the board takes its responsibility seriously and not just support the administration, but really asserts itself in a way that we make this a priority, that we bring it to our schools, to our teachers, not just at the administrative level. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Gaynor. Now, Ms. James.
Chris, could you please repeat the question?
Okay. With the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program, there's a need to understand what the Black Lives Matter movement means to students, especially after the Pioneer High School episode referring to ongoing discrimination in our high schools. What can the board do to see that this matter is a top priority initiative that is addressed and solved, and that there's a safe environment for those airing their concerns?
So the first thing the board could do is make it a top priority. And not skirt away from it. I feel like, especially as a parent of color, this stuff at Pioneer isn't something new. It's something that my children experience both at Pioneer and even at Ann Arbor Open. I think that it makes people uncomfortable, so people aren't really willing to really deal with it because it makes them have to do self-examination, which is what's needed. The racial bias training for the teachers, administrative, and the board is a vital part of that. We have to recognize, and I say we, all of us, have to recognize our own individual biases before we can even attempt to try to equalize things and try to make it more equitable. I love the idea of working with the community and getting voices. And I love the idea of working with the University of Michigan. I love the idea that Krystle has about the tracking system. I think that's very important. I think it's a lot more common than people are saying, and even just as running. I know what my personal experiences have been, and I didn't take it all the way up to the board. I didn't even know that it was an option. So, and I've had at least 4 different experiences with 2 different children. So I think that to make this a priority, you actually have to make it a priority and stop running from it and pretending like it's not happening. And work with the community, and also listen to the students when they're telling you that these things are happening. Children, I call them young people, children, whatever. They are often discredited. And when you are poor, and if you are low income, if you are a person of color, if you are a special education family, you are discarded. If you have plenty of money in Ann Arbor or plenty of influences, then your needs are met almost immediately. That's unacceptable. So first, we need a change in mindset. We need a change in our mindset.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Now we'll move to question 4. Okay, and this is question 4. After the recent successful passage of the millage to improve facilities, all actions that will be taken in redoing the buildings and grounds should include the city's goals around carbon emissions and greenhouse gases. Would you support the establishment of a sustainability officer and a citizens committee that would oversee this project? Why or why not? Ms. DuPree.
A fast moment to think about that. So I think it's very important that we reach our carbon neutrality goals, or at least set a very clear and tangible path to working towards our carbon neutrality goals by 2030. That's actually something I started to learn a lot more about when I decided to run for school board, because that's something that affects folks in our community that may not even have children. So one of the things is I would support doing this as long as I had enough information on what the responsibilities were expected to, like what we're exactly going to be overseeing. One of my biggest things is responsible contracting. So would this person be involved in making sure that, we're involved in responsible contracting? So depending upon what the overseeing actually looks like and the responsibility of this committee and of this officer, I would definitely support it to make sure that, again, we're doing things responsibly. We're making sure that everyone's involved is getting paid a living wage, and that we are adequately working toward those goals of carbon neutrality in a way that's fair and equitable across our district.
Okay, thank you, Ms. DuPree. And now Mr. Gaynor.
Thank you. When this bond was presented, the board discussed 3 different amounts to ask for, anywhere from like 600 million, 800 million to this amazing figure of $1 billion. This is over 20 years. Given the state of our buildings, there was a need for it. I supported the highest amount precisely because we needed that much money to ensure carbon neutrality goals. In fact, I reached out to the Ecology Center and the Sierra Club, local chapters, and discussed with them the issue. And, I feel I was somewhat instrumental in getting their endorsements for the bond, with the assurance that I would do everything I could to push the district toward this carbon neutrality. I'm not sure we're going to reach the goal at 2030 because we have the money coming in over 20 years. But I do think it's important that we set goals for every 5 years, and that every decision we make is done in terms of this ultimate goal. We have it was part of a pilot project. We have 4 electric buses and charging station, and we have to keep that up. 30 seconds, there's so much to say. I do believe that it makes sense to hire a sustainability manager. I've worked with Missy Stultz at the city, and she does amazing work in terms of informing people. We need somebody dedicated to work with students and teachers to make sure sustainability is a feature of everyday life in the classroom and at the schools. And I won't continue that commitment.
Thank you, Mr. Gaynor. Ms. James.
Once again, please repeat the question.
Okay. After the recent successful passage of the millage to improve facilities, all actions that would be taken in redoing the buildings and grounds should include the city's goals around carbon emissions and greenhouse gases. Would you support the establishment of a sustainability officer and a citizens committee that would oversee this project? Why or why not?
So I think I, once again, have to agree with Krystle in the sense of it depends on what their responsibility is. I do think that we need someone to oversee it. One of our top priorities should be, because we live in Ann Arbor, which our arbors is protecting our environment. I think that it's all of our responsibilities, especially if we value Ann Arbor, to do this as smoothly and quickly as possible. As far as someone oversight be in charge of it, I think it's very important, because if we want it done right, we have to have someone to have the oversight of it and where the buck will stop, and someone that will report to the board what's going on. But again, it depends on exactly what it is that they will be covering until I know more, or until that is decided, and who decides what they will cover. So I think it's a good idea in theory. I would love to see how it would actually be in practice.
Okay, thank you, Ms. James. Now, Ms. Kennel.
So this is actually something that's really near to my heart. I full-heartedly support us having a sustainability officer in conjunction with the city and creating a citizens committee that would be made up of our teachers and our students and maybe some facility managers. I think that we need to work to this goal. This is a very crucial point. There was a recent article that came out of UCLA that stated that our students that are in the 5th grade right now will have a shortened life expectancy because of the fact that they're going to die early because of the environmental changes that are happening right now. We need to work as a population to commit to this. The bond passage is going to allow us the time and energy to really dig into this and make it a top priority. Every improvement we make in the schools moving forward should have this as one of the top goals, and it needs to be done equitably. So if schools are in greater disrepair and they're going to be the priority, then we can launch these models with those schools. And I think by having an oversight of an officer and a committee, we're going to have a lot of great input from our district. I think, like as Krystle stated before, you know, we have the University of Michigan here. We have a lot of resources that we can partner with, and then we can increase our purchasing power for some of these improvements by working together with the city. So if this is a in-concert plan, then I think that the improvements between the city and the schools is going to happen at a faster rate, and it's going to be consistent, and it will become ingrained in our everyday existence. So hopefully this, along with creating a curriculum that helps our students learn every day that they can make a difference in the environment that surrounds them, both physically and help with their social and emotional health, I think that it's worth every effort we can to make sure that we have the right people in place to help oversee that this is a priority in our district.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Now we move into question 5, and it's going to have to be our last question because of time limitations. And this one is regarding the schools of choice dilemma. Ann Arbor was late in coming to the table about schools of choice for a variety of reasons. Since opening its doors to schools of choice, many students from other districts have chosen to attend. There's a staggering number of students from just the Ypsilanti Community School District alone. How do you feel about the funding inequities among the school districts and the $1 billion funding boost, which makes us even more attractive and part of our allure. Think too of the increasing disparity between the have and have-nots. It's sure to get worse. Do we have an obligation to figure out a fairness doctrine, how that could work? How could we establish a we're all in this together kind of mantra? Is it our job to worry about this? Yes, the schools of choice dilemma is, like the COVID-19 situation, a big, big question. So please tell us here the most important things you do as a board member to address the concerns about it. We'll start this time with Mr. Gaynor.
All of the candidates have equity as a central goal this year, and I'm so pleased to see that. When I first came on the board, I was told by a current board member that my concern now should be just for the students and families of Ann Arbor, not for anybody else. But growing up in Detroit, seeing what's happened to that district, seeing what the state government has done, and looking at the inequitable funding that the state has overseen for the last couple of decades and beyond, as a person who cares about all children, I have to take a stand here. In fact, I've been the lone person to vote against the Ann Arbor's school of choice policy. On my first vote, I wrote out a 3-page single-page statement and added charts that I'm willing to share with anybody who asks for it. It's a very complex question. Families who are priced out of Ann Arbor but had gone to school here, they want to continue. I totally understand that. But if we're looking at equity, if we're looking at all of our children in the region, it's just not a fair system. It leaves too many people out. Ypsilanti has 4,000 students. Now 1,000 students or more are coming to school in Ann Arbor. And that has such a disparate effect on the finances for Ypsilanti and for the families who remain, who can't send their kids here. I fought for more equitable funding for the state. I've worked as part of my work with the Washtenaw Association of School Boards, ways to mitigate this. Unfortunately, the wealthier districts in the county have no interest in sharing those resources, but I'm going to keep working at this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gaynor. Now, Ms. James.
Okay. So I must admit, at one point in time, I thought it was an awesome idea until I talked to Jeff as I decided to run. I never really thought about the perspective of how it was negatively affecting the city in which the kids were coming from. That's a problem, especially since it is a lower income community. When all things are said and done, Ann Arbor has tons of money. And we have tons of families here with money. The PTOs are always raising crazy money. But once the money is gone for Ypsilanti, it's gone. So I think that it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of immoral that we're taking money from poor people to make sure that we have more money. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. We're giving school a choice, and yes, we're giving opportunities to people, but we're only giving it to people that parents can drive them here, parents that have the resources. So not only are we taking resources from a community that has a lower income, we're making it harder for the most impoverished, for lack of better terminology, the people that don't have the money, the schools that don't have the money. And it's just not cool. So I don't think I like it.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. James. Now, Ms. Kennel.
Thank you. So I think this is probably one of the driving topics that actually helped me decide to run. I think as I started looking at the patterns of in-district transfer and school of choice in the city of Ann Arbor at schools the last couple of years, and then really digging into the board's presentations over the last 5 to 6 years, you really see a trend. Our school of choice back in 2014 was around 51 kids, and now, not this year, but the year before, it was up to 511 students. That's a lot of students coming to Ann Arbor from outside of the district. And I think that there are definitely people that have good reasons. You know, if there's teachers that are working here and they're bringing their kids with them so they can go to school here because they're in the district and it's more convenient for them. I think that there are definitely good reasons for school of choice, but I don't think we should be actively recruiting students away based on the fact that we have the resources. I think there also needs to be an in-depth look at our building capacities. A lot of times we're overpopulating some schools that are desirable in Ann Arbor, which leave holes in other ones. I mean, King Elementary School had modules put in because they allowed, and it wasn't due to school, the actual district students around it, it was due to in-district transfer and school of choice. So I think that we need to make sure that we are making good choices for our district. Yes, we want to make sure that our schools are full and we're not having to lay off teachers, because that headcount is how we make our general fund dollars. But I think that we need to not strip, like Jamila said, we need to not strip the districts around us of their students, leaving them with less money. And I think we need to educate the public to better understand how that funding happens at the state level and then change it at the root source. So I think that we need to go to the state and actually change the rulings. So if, in regards to your fairness doctrine, I think that it would be a great implementation if the board could get together and come up with that.
Thank you, Ms. Kennel. And now, Ms. DuPree.
Ooh, so school choice. School choice has actually turned out to be a pretty hot topic here lately. So for me, I am not really a supporter of school choice. It's one of those things that sounds really good in theory, and then in application, it's something different. As everyone has mentioned, it actually takes funding from the child's home district, and it leaves students who are unable to get transportation, whose families do not have the means and resources, with a district that is underfunded. Particularly in YCS, they've had problems before with being able to receive technology for them to even participate in standardized testing. Meanwhile, a lot of their students are coming to this district. We also think about per pupil funding as it relates to special education. Many parents come to Ann Arbor Public Schools for special education services. I was told when my son was in kindergarten to stay in Ann Arbor Public Schools to make sure that he got the services that he needs. Well, you get a higher per pupil funding for special education students, and those students are coming over here. So it is really draining the district next to us. I think that, you know, coming up with a fairness plan is the right thing to do. Also, being able to talk to people in YCS and seeing how the school choice program is actually affecting their district and affecting their students is very, very important. We need to have these conversations on both sides of the aisle. As was mentioned, it makes sense. Like, I work at Avalon Housing at Caraway as a community and youth coordinator. Okay, if the buildings were open and I still lived on that border of Pittsfield and Ypsi, it would probably make sense for me to bring my son here because it'd be faster for me to pick him up from school. I am a single parent. I have no childcare. So that would have worked for me. So there are those situations. But as was mentioned, when we were actively recruiting, it looks like targeting. And then we are pulling away resources from the district right next to us and making it so it's much more difficult for this district to compete academically.
Thank you, candidates. It's now time for closing statements. And as I mentioned previously, we'll begin in reverse order from what we did the opening statements in. So our first closing statement will come from Ms. Kennel.
I just want to start off by saying thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum for us. It's always wonderful. We've done these a couple nights in a row now, and it's so great to get to hear everyone's perspective. I'm looking forward to whoever ends up on the board moving forward, because I think that we all have a very collaborative spirit. We all are similarly rooted in our information. We're all looking to improve the educational system that's already here. So for me, I am running because I am looking to increase our equity across the district. I'm looking to improve our transparency across the district, and I'm looking to improve our inclusivity. So those are the three goals that I wish to work on if I'm elected to the board. And I'm looking forward to working on it with the existing board members that are currently there and will be running in 2 years, and anybody else that's voted in, because I feel that we're all ready to make a difference and make a change and really sharpen our focus on education that's in our district.
Thank you, Ms. Kennel. And now the closing statement from Ms. James.
So, I'm not an educator.
I don't have a whole bunch of degrees. I'm a nurse and I'm a parent. I'm running for school board because I want to take care of all of our kids, not just the ones that's going to college. And I want to prepare our kids for the real world. I think that's kind of makes me the outlier of all the people running because my focus is about dealing with the children holistically. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, but my focus is on the kids. Social emotional learning, money management, skilled trades. It's about taking care of them and preparing them for our current world, not the one in the past. The testing, the continuous testing, the inequity, it's just a mess. And no one in the meantime are focusing on what the kids really need. We had recess, we had life skills, we had skilled trades. And when we left high school, we could more or less survive. We may not have done it well, but we could. They can't today. I want to be on the board to make sure that these things are a priority. And I want to take care of our children. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. James. Now we're ready for the closing statement from Mr. Gaynor.
In my 4 years on the board, I've been known somewhat of a gadfly, someone who will ask the difficult questions, someone who will challenge the superintendent, someone who will be a voice of dissent when my conscience says that's what needs to happen. I think that's important. I have to say I'm thrilled with the candidates that are up for election this year. This board will be strong. They're caring, they're knowledgeable, they're smart. In fact, I think so much of them that on my campaign website, gaynorforaaps.com, see how I got that plug in there? I have links to all of the other candidates' websites. And I'm sure we'd all like to have people request yard signs from us. But back to the issue. I have 5 items under my value and focus statement. 3 of them were discussed in questions today. Advocating for racial and social justice, monitoring the $1 billion bond and carbon neutrality, and how do we work out the school year. To that, I would add the need for openness and transparency, fostering community input and discussion, and critical thinking and problem solving, as well as enabling and supporting teacher professionalism and empowerment. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gaynor. Finally, we have your closing statement, Ms. DuPree.
Thank you. So again, my name is Krystle DuPree, and I thank you guys so much for having me.
Oop, did we lock up there?
Oh. Can you hear me now? Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. Again, my name is Krystle DuPree, and thank you guys for having me so much. Like I tell people a lot, this is my first time running for anything. Didn't run for student body president, prom queen, none of these things. But this is very, very important to me. I'm running because I care, because I'm a parent who has a child who uses special education services, and I've had to advocate for him. I'm running because I'm an activist, and there are students in need of that sort of voice on the board to push their demands, such as having a discrimination tracking system for our district. I'm running because, you know, I have really dedicated myself to service and advocacy. Again, I am an Army veteran and a social worker. So both those things really show my dedication to community. One of the benefits of me having been in the Army is I know how to work with very different personalities and still keep it mission focused. Mission focused means we're advocating for our parents, our students, our teachers. We're working towards our carbon neutrality goals. We are participating in responsible contracting and looking out for our union members. We are doing all these things, and we're doing so in a way to make sure that our board is effective and we're moving in an equitable direction. So I think that I would be a good addition to the board because I am all about teamwork and all about equity, and also making sure that we are being held accountable by our community.
Thanks to all of you for participating in this valuable session. Tonight's forum is the second of 2 for the public schools of the City of Ann Arbor board member positions. This forum will feature 2 of the 7 candidates who are running. Now it's my honor to introduce those 2 candidates running for the public schools of the City of Ann Arbor board member positions, Mr. Ernesto Carrijero and Ms. Angie Smith. Now, a third candidate for the board was also invited to this meeting. That's Mr. John Spisak, but he apparently was unable to attend tonight. So we'll only have Ms. Smith and Mr. Kerry Harrell. Thank you, candidates, for participating in this forum. The forum tonight will have this format. Each candidate will have an opening statement of up to 1 minute. Each candidate will then have a closing statement at the end, of course, of up to 90 seconds. In between, I'll ask questions which came from the Ann Arbor community. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to a question. At appropriate times, the sign on the screen will indicate the time remaining, 30 seconds, and then stop. If you've used up your time, you'll be allowed to finish your sentence, and then your microphone will be muted so the other candidate in this case, will have an equal opportunity to participate. The candidates will begin speaking in alphabetical order. Depending on the number of questions, all candidates will have an opportunity to be the first or last, an equal number of times, or very close to it. So now we're ready for your opening statement, Mr. Ernesto Carry-Harrell.
Good evening, everybody, Ann Arbor voters, everybody in the Ann Arbor School District. My name is Ernesto Carry-Harrell. As I said, I'm running for the Ann Arbor School Board. Education is my passion. I've been a teacher for nearly 15 years now, working in 2 places in high school and post-secondary education. I'm running to be on the board because I believe that a sitting active teacher in a virtual classroom needs to have some representation on what's going on in our community at a time when everything seems upside down and unsafe. And I feel like my voice and my perspective with my experience and my background is one that would be valuable in the decision-making that's going to go forward for us. There's a lot of uncertainty, and I feel like my platform of trying to enhance and safeguard student learning is the right one at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Carry-Harrell. And now Ms. Angie Smith, may we have your opening statement?
Yes, hi, I'm Angie Smith, and I'm here because I care about kids. As an educator, I get it. I have taught and worked and volunteered with all ages from preschool through adult. I've worked with incarcerated learners, gifted students, kids with traumatic brain injuries. I've been a classroom teacher. I've worked one-on-one with students as well. I've been a parent in the district for 17 years, and I have experience supporting and interacting with teachers, parents, administrators, and board members on issues that have been of concern to me. I've been a weekly volunteer, a PTO president, a part-time support staff member, and have sat on committees that investigate policy change, both within our district and within our broader community. Through this, I have learned that we need to invest in what we value, and I am ready for a new role as a trustee for the Ann Arbor Board of Education. If elected, I hope to reflect and respect the values of our community. My goal is to challenge everyone from teachers to top administrators to work collaboratively and collectively to ensure a more just and equitable educational experience for our students.
Thank you, candidates. And now to the questions. As a reminder, I'll be reading the question once, and I won't repeat the question unless you request. To begin tonight, we'll start with Angie Smith with the first question. And here it is. Being an effective school board member requires deep and wide knowledge of the district, how it operates, how it's funded, what each school's strengths and weaknesses are, how teachers are treated, what administrators do, and that's just a start. What do you bring to the table that makes you the candidate of choice? Which areas of the job might you need to learn more about in order to be an effective leader? Ms. Smith?
Okay, so what am I bringing to the table here is what you're asking. I've got my own perspective that I can lend as an educator. I understand issues of pedagogy. I understand challenges of being in the classroom. As a parent, I can share my experiences with the board when decisions are being made. All of the decisions that are made impact and influence how we support our children. So I think that's a important perspective as well. But as a candidate, I think I've learned a lot about what our community is looking for and needs when it comes to education. I've had the chance to talk to hundreds of people just in the past month during my campaign about what their concerns are, what they love about our schools. And I think the opportunity to be able to communicate with our district and build a stronger community because of that is something that I'd like to really move forward on. The next part of the question was, what areas do I think I need to look more into and learn more about? And by talking to board members, I found that many of them feel like they thought the board was this, and then once they got into the position, they realized it was something a little bit different. So I do understand there's going to be a learning curve, and what I think I know might not be enough. I think areas of the budget, especially when it comes to how that bond spending is going to be done, how we can be good stewards of that and it can be spent equitably in a way that really supports the values of our community, is something that I'm really going to spend the first segment of my board membership really learning a lot about.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Smith. Now, Mr. Kerry Harrell.
Yeah, so the first part of that question, what I could bring, you covered a lot of ground there. One thing I could say that I bring is a wide-ranging perspective. I've had a lot of different opportunities to have different learning experiences in my career even. I worked as a computer systems consultant at the University of Michigan. I've worked in K-12 education, teaching high school students, at-risk school and summer school in Columbia School District out in Brooklyn. I currently teach at Washtenaw Community College. So I definitely bring the educational experience. If I were elected, I would also be teaching in a virtual classroom as well. So education is something that is near and dear to my heart. It's something I've been working on and fighting for my whole career. In addition to that perspective, again, like I said, I have some background in computers, being a systems consultant, but also like I'm a first generation American. I'm the son of immigrants. I have a lot of different experiences living in this city in particular, having different kinds of work. So I think that's sort of across the socioeconomic range, and also culturally, I have a lot of experience as well. I think one thing that, speaking of culture, one thing that I think I probably would need to, and I think this would be true of all candidates, is to get a little bit more awareness of local school cultures. I know that from building to building, all the way from elementary school, all the way up to K-12, individual buildings have their own culture to them. They have their own beliefs. Sometimes this is, certainly influenced by their neighborhood element. I'm a big fan of neighborhood schools, but also like the Ann Arbor Open, the school we're at, it has its own culture. My daughter was spent a little time at Allen School, and we live right behind here by Mitchell and Scarlett. So getting to know those buildings and what those folks in those particular buildings, what the administrative culture, the teaching culture, how communities feel with their relationships with teachers and support staff, I think that's something that everyone could use work on. That's something I'd be looking to figure out and determine as a sitting board member. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Now we move to question 2. And this question is about COVID-19. And in fact, this is a very big question. It's many questions in one. So, listen carefully, and you might want to jot down how some of the things you're going to want to focus on. Think of the pandemic's ramifications on our schools, children, teachers, parents, and community. You've been around for the discussions and for the directives that have come from the school district and for the reactions from every corner. Were the right decisions made? What is the ongoing prognosis for our distance learning methodology? How do we address the lost time for students who are not experiencing in-person instruction? Who should be our advisors and our experts? What further role is there for the board to play? Now, this is a lot for you to answer in a short time slot. So please, I would recommend you focus on what your top priorities would be for addressing the effects that COVID-19 has had on our schools and students if you're elected to the board. Mr. Kerry Harrell, you'll start this time.
Yeah, so I think the biggest issue facing young people in particular, and I'm mostly talking about those students in elementary who might be emerging readers, I think that is the most critical group of students right now, in addition to special education students. I mean, that goes without saying. But students who are emerging readers right now are facing a lot of struggle in that they're being asked to do instructions and reading off a screen, and I know for me personally, I like to read physically with a book, and I know there's not a competition, but there's a lack of resources for students, even where behind here at Scholar Mitchell, where they don't have those physical books. So for emerging readers, I think it's the most dangerous in terms of the impact it'll have for their mental health and their well-being in the long run, but more importantly, their relationship to learning. I think when students aren't in face-to-face learning, I think that they're thinking about their relationship with it's a little different. So they might be a little bit resistant. So it's very easy to imagine, like we've heard in some of those opening letters at the Board of Education meetings, about parents watching their students simply just get frustrated and disengaged very quickly being on the screen in those mornings. Again, we're mostly talking about elementary school students. So I think those students in particular will have to be careful for the gaps when we do return to in-person learning, hopefully sooner rather than later when it's safe. I would say they're going to need a lot of support. Reading specialists, other kinds of outreach, parent volunteers. I know Angie's one, I'm one. All of our parents are going to have to figure out a way, because obviously there'll be some restrictions on getting back into the building to do that kind of volunteer work, but to really sit with your children and at this stage and let them learn that let them know that learning is a good thing, that it's fun. It doesn't have to be frustrating. And it's not only in one mode. Learning exists beyond you staring at a Zoom, which I know that some students are gonna feel that way. Oh, it's school again, that means it's Zoom again, which I hope that perspective doesn't stick with them. And when it's safe and we get back, it'll take a lot of work to change that perception of students.
Thank you, Mr. Carey Harrell. Now, Ms. Smith.
I love your answer, Ernesto. That really resonates for me. We are all surviving a moment in history right now, not just students, not just elementary and high school students, but we as a society are surviving some tough times. You know, it's something that we couldn't have predicted, and it's something that we don't know when it will end. And that gives a level of uncertainty to all of us that can feel stressful to many people. And for that reason, it's really critical that our systems are here to support families, and education being the most important one of the systems that we can use to support families in my mind. We hear about resilience and how it's developed in tough times. And this is one of those times where we're all developing some resilience. Even when things are hard and the Zoom crashes and the day doesn't go as planned and the lesson isn't taught, there's some learning that comes out of that. And I think the opportunity to use these kind of teachable moments is here for us, so that we can encourage the spirit of lifelong learning that this is a piece of. Now, I don't want to put down the chance to talk about how families that are struggling really do need some supports. As a tutor to students with traumatic brain injuries, I understand how serious regression can be and how difficult it is to get back up to the learning level that you want to be at when things have slid down for some reason or another. I think as a board, as a district, we need to support the most marginalized, the most fragile among us, the very first. And we need to rely on experts, as you said, Chris. I think the experts come from science. We need to look at science. And once we figure out who our reliable experts are, we need to come up with a plan. And that plan needs to be communicated clearly and followed by the district, and also able to be changed.
Okay, yeah, we need to stop.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, candidates. And now we'll move to question 3. This concerns, the next 2 questions actually concern initiatives that are very high priorities for both Washtenaw County and Ann Arbor. So this is question 3. With the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program, there's a need to understand what the Black Lives Matter movement means to students, especially after the Pioneer High School episode referring to ongoing discrimination in our high schools. What can the board do to see that this matter is a top priority initiative that is addressed and solved, and that there's a safe environment for those airing their concerns? This time we'll start with Ms. Smith.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question one more time? I missed the end of it.
Yeah, with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program, there's a need to understand what the Black Lives Matter movement means to students, especially after the Pioneer High School episode referring to ongoing discrimination in our high schools. What can the board do to see that this matter is a top priority initiative that is addressed and solved, and that there's a safe environment for those airing their concerns?
Okay, safety and equity needs to be the most important goals for our district, period. We need to start with safety and equity. And I think what Black Lives Matter means to students is a sense of belonging. It develops a place where they feel safe, where they feel they can trust one another. That community is very important to the students who are engaged in it. When students don't feel safe, when any of us don't feel safe in a situation, it's really hard to move forward, especially on these big issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. These are big problems to solve. So we need to start by establishing a safe space in order to have these conversations. I think the first thing that needs to happen is set some norms of respect and what that looks like in our conversations. Some people don't feel welcome to the table when it comes to talking about these issues. Some people feel like they're forgotten. They get frustrated. They don't want to engage any longer. That comes from that feeling of uncertainty. We need to, as a board, make sure that these conversations are happening within our community and that people are feeling heard and that their contributions to the conversation are significant. The pioneer issue is one that is heartbreaking to me. I was able to read some of the allegations that came out of that. And as a community member, I want to start by apologizing that this is something that could happen to in our school community. I think there are steps within our school district that are being taken to increase equity and diversity and inclusion practices. I think this is a real ripe time to be talking about those, to be addressing those, to be reaching them out farther into our community, into families, and also into our curriculum.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Smith. Now, Mr. Kerry Harrell.
Yeah, so as it relates to representation and equity, one thing that I would like to do is to increase the voices of the community. I think that is one reason why some people feel like they can't speak out or have to speak out to other people. And I think this can happen in a couple of different ways. The main way, I think, is teaching students how to self-advocate for themselves, so that when in situations where they do feel threatened or feel like they're not being respected, they need to have ways to be able to express that rather than take it away from the situation and let it build up. And we do need to make safe spaces for that. And so on the question of representation and equity, I think inclusion, belongingness, that's all in the same package. And the only way that we're going to be able to get that is to let them speak out loud and give them a platform to do that. I somewhat suggested this on last night's call, where I can envision in our Zoom world now where that public commentary can be submitted as videos for the public to actually speak their own words. And I know they allot time for it, but I just don't see why we can't have the voices of the people of those words coming forward. I will now extend that to our current question, which is about students. I envision a model where actually the students run a meeting and we, the community, watch what they have to say. So a little bit of role play reversal where maybe as trustees, as teachers, as support staff, as parents, we watch students talk about the issues at stake and let them be civil participants in the discussion. If we give them that challenge, they will meet that responsibility. There's no doubt about that. And they will take it. They will take it to heart. They will know that they're being heard and that we are listening, because we'll put them in the forefront, which is where they should always be in the realm of education anyway.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Now we'll move to question 4. And here it is. After the recent successful passage of the millage to improve facilities, all actions that will be taken in redoing the buildings and grounds should include the city's goals around carbon emissions and greenhouse gases. Would you support the establishment of a sustainability officer and a citizens committee that would oversee this project? Why or why not? And this time, Mr. Kerry Harrell will go first.
I would support that 100%. I am 100% in agreement that our community and our public schools should be in compliance with our 2030 neutrality goals, and that the state of climate emergency is in fact an emergency. I feel that our our community responded with passing that bond for us to do something about that. And I know that we are doing something that we even have to move faster. In addition to that, to make sure that sustainability and carbon neutrality is in the minds of not only the adults around here, but again, I'm gonna go back to those students because that's who I'm always thinking about most, is I can actually envision a programming that's centered around sustainability, curricular program, and that can happen everywhere through K through 12. We have a lot of active groups. We have a lot of climate voters in our cities. We've got a lot of climate activist groups in our city, including the Sunrise Movement. And so I would envision where we are working with them and those young people who a little bit older than high school who know what's at stake. That is not, I won't call it recruiting, but it's more like informing young people of the fight to come, which is gonna be a climate and a sustainability fight for them. We need to educate them. We wanna make sure that they're participants, that they're proactive about doing and enacting behaviors that will lead towards carbon neutrality and sustainability. That starts with everything at a building level, from composting to teaching about recycling. We also have like science projects that all of the things that we do in school, they could be at least focused on some kind of sustainability, carbon neutrality goals. And again, involving young people into the process, I think is the most important thing because this is their future. These are the problems that they're gonna have to deal with, and we better start helping them solve them and help. That means helping them help themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Carey-Harrow. And now Ms. Smith.
I would also agree that this would be a nice idea to have a sustainability officer and a citizens committee to oversee the reaching of these goals. First of all, there has to be some really specific goals that are set in order to reach this 2030 challenge that we have in front of us. Or even if we're just working towards that, we need very specific understanding of what needs to be done and how we're going to go about doing that. And the board, the district, the bond money there needs to be accountability there. So why not involve our community in that? By engaging the community to oversee that accountability process, that gives us, just an extra measure to make sure that we are using that money in the way that it was intended, that we are good stewards of that money. I like that you brought up the student opportunity there. My oldest daughter, who is an Ann Arbor Public School grad, is now in her senior year of college, and she's an environmental policy major. And when I talked to her about the concerns that the district will have to be facing about this, she said a very important piece will be education of the community. I like to think of these buildings as learning vessels. The people in them can be learning about them. The people around them could also be using them as a way to learn how to take care of. These are going to be opportunities for us to have models of how to best move forward in climate change, how we are addressing climate change. So using these to educate the community, both as a curriculum means and as a way that we can showcase the work that we're doing, is something that I really would be in support of.
Thank you, candidates. Now we move to question 5, and it'll be the last question due to time limitations. And this question regards the schools of choice dilemma. Ann Arbor was late in coming to the table for schools of choice for a variety of reasons. But since opening its doors to schools of choice, many students from other districts have chosen to attend. There's a staggering number of students just from the Ypsilanti Community School District alone. How do you feel about the funding inequities among the school districts and the $1 billion funding boost, which makes us in Ann Arbor even more attractive and part of our allure? Think too of the increasing disparity between the have and have-nots. It's sure to get worse. Do we have an obligation to figure out how a fairness doctrine could work? How could we establish a kind of mantra of we're all in this together? Is it our job to worry about this? Yes, the schools of choice dilemma is, like the earlier COVID-19 question or situation, a big question that we've posed to you here. So please tell us here the most important things you do as a board member to address these concerns with schools of choice. This time, it is Ms. Smith who goes first this time.
You're asking if it's our job to worry about this. I think it's our job to think about this, but I think we need to go beyond worry. I think we need to take some action. Living on the east side of the city, I'm very aware of this disparity between how kids in our zip codes are served and what kind of funding they have, and the funding that kids from the Ypsilanti zip codes get. And it's something that we can be leaders on once again. I do support the idea of families being able to make choices for their students, for their kids, as far as what school curriculum and learning opportunity is best for them. I'm a firm believer in public education, and I'd love to see public schools that offer different opportunities for kids. Ernesto mentioned he and I both have kids who go to Ann Arbor Open, which is a sort of magnet program that accepts kids from all over the district. My kids went to Washtenaw International, which is another sort of a magnet program for kids all over the county. There's other county programming that is also really successful and a wonderful opportunity for our kids to have different services that wouldn't be available if we only had the one school in our local neighborhood to choose from. I'm thinking of High Point as an opportunity, as an example of that. The ECA program at Eastern. There's lots of good ways that we're making good use of county resources. One thing that we might be able to do, and I realize I'm running out of time now, is look at how we can share expenses. For example, the idea was floated about a month ago. Is there a way that we could look at staff medical support and how we take those benefits, and could we share those expenses countywide? I think there's something really special about the separate school districts. You know, we talked a little bit earlier about community schools and how they have their own culture. That's the same for Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor too. So I wouldn't want to see the combination of those schools, but I think we can work together.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Now, Mr. Carey Harrell.
So I'll try to answer this question a little bit broader in that the big problem here is the way public schools are funded. That's really the big issue at stake, which is always under the model of for-profit and profiteering. And I think people who have worked in educational landscape know this, that it's all based on your property tax values, the number of students that come in on count day. And I've even worked in and seen districts that, you know, have a count day drive where we're going to make sure students come in on these count days that are twice a year so that we make sure that we get all our money in the district. And school of choice is a product of this profiteering, in that we need to generate more money. We need to attract more students. And what happens now is that all of a sudden our educational system, which is meant to be guiding student learning and safeguarding and safety in our community, suddenly becomes a marketing campaign to attract students so we can make money. Let's not make a joke about this. This is what school of choice really is. It's the ability to draw money into our district, because what do we have to do every year? We have to balance that budget, and it's got to be in accordance with that certain time. And there aren't a whole lot of ways for a district to generate funds without attracting students, just because of the way the funding stream works. So for me, school of choice is just one of the many problems that's a result of an unfair system. The other part of the unfair system I touched on earlier, which is our reliance on standardized testings to evaluate at times teachers and districts at a state level, when really we should be assessing our students in our own different ways. What I will say is this: if we are going to claim to be leaders in education in the Ann Arbor Public School District, we need to have a change that will be a little bit different. I will finish it with this saying: if the vote were today for school of choice, I would vote for it. And because that would bring revenue to our, bring revenue to our district, and two, for students who are in our neighboring communities, they deserve and they have the right to have an education that they believe best suits them.
Well, thank you very much, candidates. It's now time for the closing statements. Again, you'll have 90 seconds for the closing statement. We'll start here with Ms. Smith.
I got so into those questions, I almost forgot we got a closing. Thank you. I want to close by asking for your vote. I mentioned that I've spoken to hundreds of voters in the district over the past months, and they've identified some critical issues. Empowering students regardless of their background, supporting teachers, communications about virtual learning, stewardship of bond spending and climate responsibilities. I take the stories that I hear to heart as a person, and the takeaway is clear. There's a lot of work for us to do. I will be a strong advocate for these issues. Like so many in the community, like so many other communities, the pandemic has really laid bare so many issues of injustice for us to work on. This also means that we're ripe to examine and reform problems, including racial bias, how we support students with non-neurotypical needs, respect for teachers and staff members and other workers, and responsibilities to carbon neutrality, the health, the safety of our community, and so much more. As an educator and a member of our community, I've learned this universal truth. If we want a strong and connected community, the best foundation we have to offer is a strong public education. I'll work hard towards the goal of supporting every member of our school community in a way that they need in order to reach their best potential. Thank you for your time tonight, and I truly hope you get the time and the opportunity to vote on or by November 3rd. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Smith. And now, Mr. Carahero, your 90 seconds for your closing statement.
Well, I'm also asking for your vote. I mean, I think that as a community, we need to sort of become whole again. I think there's a lot of distrust amongst families and amongst the board, amongst teachers, and it's forgivable at a time like this because we're in a crazy time and we're stuck indoors for a lot of us, and it's tough. Okay, I think one thing that our board needs is a perspective of a teacher, an educator, an active one, a full-time one, someone who does it every day. I graded papers today. I'll grade papers tonight. Actually, when this call is over, I'll grade papers tomorrow. I will be thinking about students in my mind all the time. It's not something that I will do on the weekends or in my volunteer time. This is what makes me who I am. And I think everybody who knows me know this is about me, that I have students at the forefront of my mind whenever. And second to that is their ability to advocate for themselves and their ability to have a safe space to say what's on their mind so that they can get the kind of help that they know is best for them. We need to start looking of students as people, as not as people we count on a specific day, people who have their own socioeconomic, their own belief system, their own values that are just as valuable as everybody else, whether those be teachers, community members, elected officials, everybody. Their voice is the one that we need to be hearing all the time. This future is theirs, and we should give it to them. We should give them the responsibility and give them a little bit of voice in how things are going to be done, because this is their future.
Well, thanks to both of you candidates for participating in this very valuable session. I'll now turn the moderation, I suppose it would be, back to Lynne, our league representative, for closing comments.
Thank you, Chris. The league thanks the candidates for participating in tonight's forum and to those who contributed questions. All our candidate forums will be available for streaming on your computer or smartphone. Go to our website, lwvannarbor.org, and look for the link to the programs. In addition, the forums can be viewed on Community Television Network and the League's election information website, vote411.org. Please urge your friends and neighbors to watch these forums too. For additional nonpartisan information on candidates and ballot issues, go to vote411.org, the League's voter resource guide covering local, state, and federal candidates and current proposals that will appear on your ballot. As a reminder, all registered voters may cast an absentee ballot. With the challenges that have been created by COVID-19 and confusion regarding registration and voting procedures, the League encourages you to vote absentee as soon as possible after you feel knowledgeable about the candidates and ballot issues. If mailing your ballot, please do so by October 20th to be sure there's enough time for your ballot to reach your clerk by Election Day. Or you may deliver your ballot in person to your clerk's office